Hello and thanks for staying with us on your channel of choice, Africa Independent Television, AIT. Welcome to the Signature Show. I'm Endanger Njoko, and this afternoon I ask us the question: what does it take to bring sunshine into the life of a nation? We will address that question presently, but first let me apologize to so many of you who reacted to the issues we raised in our edition on the appointment or no appointment of a new Inspector General of Police. But unfortunately, we could not accommodate your reactions last week. But this Sunday, let us take just a few of them. All right. Now, Al Mustafa Ahmed from Sokoto, you said that in discussing security, we should not downplay the role of the National Security and Civil Defense Corps, because it is a critical institution for gathering information at the grassroots and for the protection of critical infrastructure. And Musa from Abuja, you expressed your appreciation for our inviting retired AIG Charles Ugomo to the program and asked us to create more opportunities for public enlightenment on the very important role the police plays in keeping all of us safe. Well, I want to thank all of you for following the issues and making contributions on this program. Well, still on reactions to issues raised on this program, you recall that in the last 3 episodes before Christmas of 2020, we brought you the shocking reality of how the Ministry of Education and NECO officials and proprietors of schools undermine the very examinations that determine the future of so many young Nigerians. And just last week, a viewer from Lagos had accused private schools of being the, hear this, corruption in chief in the fraud that is destroying schools and school examinations in their bid to post superlative results, justify the high fees they charge, and attract more students to their schools. Now, this Sunday, the chairman of the FCT chapter of the National Association of Proprietors of Private Schools is reacting to that allegation. Her reaction will shock you. Just stay with us.
It's is a source of great concern. From my own standpoint as a proprietor, one area we begin to actually see the impact immediately is maybe at the point of employment of teachers. We are beginning to see teachers with beautiful certificates, and then they don't really have what it takes to hold that certificate. Somebody has a 2-1. You're asking some questions. Some of them can't even put, sentences together. Punctuation mark is a problem, and you wonder, did they go through primary and secondary school at least? I mean, let's even leave universities and all of that. But it shows that the impact of exam malpractice is so damaging. It may look like, of course, I believe to a large extent that, in fact, that's why what we are even seeing as corruption in our country. I mean, someone who had gone through the process of fraudulently getting certificate that he doesn't deserve or results that he does not deserve and becomes a top person in society. He will need something to keep oiling that. He will need something. I mean, it means that the corruption will continue to grow. He will continue to look for how to tell the lies and all of that. Yeah, definitely. The truth is, I cannot deny the fact that private schools are involved. That is, except I'm going to be telling a lie. There are a number of private schools that are involved in this. But it's also true that there are quite a number of public schools. I think it has become endemic in our system. I told somebody recently that the way we wear dress, that's how some people wear corruption. Their mindset is so warped. And like you told the story, you said I take the blame. That's the truth. By the way, I don't want to say so much. I would even love that maybe some investigation is done about my own school. But the truth is, I ate that with passion, but I accept the blame. Even though, to a large extent, we are working to deal with this. Sir, a lot of things are responsible for that. When our set came on board in FCT NAPS, one of the first things that I came up with is this hashtag, no rush, no push. Sir, when a child that is 8-year-old, 9-year-old is rushed to secondary school, they will be made to pass exam anyhow, by crook or hook. So what it means also is that there are a lot of stakeholders in exam malpractices. The parents as well are involved. But please, private schools, I agree. Because, there are a lot of stories, around us that, there was one meeting we held and we actually tried to call ourselves to order. But we know that, there is so much that we can do as an association. We can talk. I can't arrest any school. Even if I know a proprietor whose school encourages malpractice, I can't do nothing. It has to take the regulatory bodies and the government to put their feet down and be sincere about it. And not that, because it's even, some of us even need to be careful. Because in the process of trying to report, you may eventually be the one that will bear the brunt of the whole thing. You'll be the one that will be, tables could turn against you. So it will take us to actually go deep into understanding the effects, how that it affects myself, it affects you, it affects everybody in the system. And it is killing us in Nigeria now. If we know that we want a better life for tomorrow, not just for our children, even starting from ourselves, and we know that corruption stems from malpractice even in schools, in examinations, even in school examinations, not to talk about the external examinations, we will be doing ourselves a lot of good if we can stem it now. Like you said, sir, I agree that it is endemic in the system. Private schools are guilty, but to be candid, public schools are equally guilty. For instance, for WAEC and NECO, they have their question banks. One would expect that if questions leak, they know about it. However we're going to place it, they know about it. It could be someone in their system that, supported someone, and then, the spiral effect is what eventually came to the point of. But, another thing is that not too long ago, we had a case of someone posting on a platform for exam officers during the last NECO exam, live question and answers to the question. We wouldn't know whether it was by mistake that the person posted it. But of course, there are those representing NECO on that platform. And all that some people, remove that person. And, some of us felt, no, this is a means for NECO to deal with exam malpractice. This person got this thing from somewhere. Trace it and get the people, the culprits, bring them to book. Put them on national television regularly. Let us always see that, there is an effort on the part of the examination bodies to deal with exam malpractice. I'm sure with consistent work, the way we are dealing with COVID now, that people are telling us reports regularly, if we can do that with exam malpractice, we caught this school doing this. I know, for instance, that WAEC does that. There was a time that list of schools across Nigeria that were involved in one form of malpractice or the other were sent to us to distribute. And, those ones in different states of the Federation, they do that. But the point is, they are the ones, when it comes to their own exams, that can also deal with that.
Now that we know that even NECO officials hawk their own examination questions and provide answers, and that we know that parents are very willing accomplices in this national shame, we will, from this coming Friday, mount a national campaign against this disgrace. And we will name names. It is going to be a radio town hall and to be on Power FM from 12:30 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. so that many more Nigerians can participate. I mean, a town hall. All right? You're watching the Signature Show on AIT. We'll take a short break now and return. Please stay with us.
This is signaturetv.org. Breaking the news. Following the news. Analyzing the news. 247 round the clock. All on the go. signaturetv.org. News in your pocket.
Now, during Nigeria's civil war, two slogans, one from the Biafran side and the other from the federal military government, sought to get the commitment of the population to their causes. The slogans were, "The price of liberty is eternal vigilance, Biafrans be vigilant." And to keep Nigeria one is a task that must be done. Now, these two slogans eloquently today speak to Nigeria's situation today. Attacks on Nigerian communities, abductions and murders, and chants of war and violence from many virulent voices are pushing Nigeria in a direction which only fools, the ignorant, and those who do not wish Nigeria well could be comfortable with. The situation requires eternal vigilance. It calls for a commitment from all Nigerians to preserve this Africa's hope and chance to make the black man an equal stakeholder in the enterprise called the world and its community of nations. To talk, to act, to goad or encourage any set of Nigerians to get this country to unravel by raising ethnic questions, by labeling, by creating hatred, is a sin against the Nigerian state and indeed the black race. In the 60s, it was the Igbo question. The hate, the distrust, the deep wound, and the division the Igbo question left Nigeria with have remained Nigeria's albatross. But indeed, was there an Igbo question? Today again, Nigeria is creating another question, the Fulani question. Is there indeed a Fulani question to which Nigeria must seek answers? This is the subject of our conversation this Sunday. I'm sure you'd want to stay with us. Stay there. Let me welcome you to the conversation segment of the Signature Show. This Sunday, and maybe in the next 2 or 3 editions of this program, we will be confronting a major national question. We will discuss the Fulani question. We will in fact ask, is there a Fulani question in Nigeria? We will also subsequently examine Nigeria's security challenges from a more sincere and honest perspective. I promised you that last Sunday. May also be, we will raise a question. What is the position of Northern Nigeria, the Northern governors' leadership, to Nigeria's security challenges? These may occupy us in the next 3 editions of this program, all things working out well. For this Sunday, we are beginning the conversation. Is there a Fulani question in Nigeria? And I have as my guest Dr. Nasir Baba Ahmed. He is the spokesperson of the Northern Elders Forum. apart from being an academic and an intellectual, he is a Fulani. So on our front, he's qualified to answer that question. Dr. Bamed, you're welcome to the conversation.
Thank you very much. It's good to see you, and thank you for inviting me back to your program. I'm very grateful.
Yes, I know the last time we conversed, we were looking at certain national problems, the very toxic conversation in the polity.
And we ended up with you raising an issue about Fulani.
The Fulanis.
You never foresaw the possibility that it can be this prominent in Nigerian politics.
Today.
I think you have a vision.
No, I'm not Nostradamus.
Well, you raised the issue towards the end of
But here we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Here we are.
Doc, I want to ask you that question a little pointedly. Is there a Fulani question in Nigeria?
Yes, there is a Fulani question. In the same way as there is a question about every ethnic group. Ethnic groups exist within the context of Nigeria. They become a problem only when you identify them wholly and entirely, and you ascribe to them certain qualities or attributes or characteristics. And when that happens, it's usually a very dangerous thing. You don't then treat them as citizens. You don't treat them as people like you treat other Nigerians. You treat them as a problem, as an issue. And we don't want to do that. We've been that road. We've been down that road before, the 60s, the 70s. And it's the last thing we want to do. I appreciate the courage to ask that question, because to be honest with you, it's a genuine question. Is there a Fulani question in Nigeria? The Fulani, in order to answer that question, you have to be a little bit patient. The Fulani is part and parcel of the entire fabric of West Africa, not to talk of Nigeria. This is a group that extends all the way from Senegal to some parts of Central African Republic. Nigeria has a huge chunk of Fulani. Fulani is not just one homogeneous group, any more than you can have Yoruba or Igbo. There are variants among them. And so in history, they have been many things. They've been great state builders. They've been great fighters. They have been known as nomads, as pastoralists for a long time. A large part of them have settled down. They are no more pastoralists. They are no more nomads. They built empires. And in Nigeria, they have very deep roots. You might know that in the beginning of the 19th century, there was a big jihad spearheaded by Fulani, Sheikh Usman Dan Fodio, who achieved a tremendous amount of reforms within Hausa land. It involved removal of a lot of the Hausa chiefs, Hausa leaders, being replaced by Fulani people. It was in 1804. In 1904, the British came and did to the Fulani what the Fulani did to the Hausa, conquered Hausa land, and imposed their own rule over them. Within that 100 years, between the jihad of Osman Dan Fodio and the coming of the British, the Fulani had become culturized as Hausa substantially. So you see a lot of emirs now who would say to you, we're Fulani. But they are Fulani only in terms of genealogy and origin, but they are basically Hausa people. The Fulani has become prominent now because I think that the nation appears to have lost its head. And I mean that in every sense of the word. We've had problems relating to specific groups. But we've always resisted the temptation to identify a problem and ascribe to them. in the 60s, we had an issue with Igbo people. Where I come from in the north, the conception was everybody from what is today the south-south and the southeast was Igbo. People didn't know about the differences. And they would say Igbo people. The coup of January 16th, January 1966, the counter coup, the pogrom of May 1966, the pogrom of November, created the aura of a group called Igbo that was, in the eyes of some people, cause of the problem and the victim of a problem. And it was a horrible part of our lives. It triggered a crisis that went on and on and on and ended up in a civil war. We ended up in a civil war, and within 2 or 3 years, the nation had reintegrated. We all realized terrible mistakes had been made, and the nation moved on. Now, it's very difficult for me to speak about the Fulani without appearing to be making excuses for them. When you ask if there is a Fulani problem, you need to understand it in the context of the last 10 to 15 years. There's a criminal Fulani. These are Fulani that we never knew about. The worst the Fulani did when he was a herder was once in a while to stray into people's farmlands, eat somebody's crops, and there were hundreds of ways in which you can resolve that, both here in the north and in the south. But we didn't know them as bandits, as kidnappers, as criminals, people who have taken over our forests. They have guns, they have weapons, they can sack entire communities. Not the kind of criminal Fulani that we know, and they exist.
Ahmed, I'm going to come to that. But there's a dimension that precedes this development of tending to label the Fulani as marauding, destructive, murderous, kidnapping. Let me ask you, is the Nigerian Fulani a landless, stateless number in a population?
There's a pastoral Fulani. His life revolves around herding his cattle and his sheep around to anywhere where they can get food and water. He doesn't own land. He doesn't need to own land. God has created this country, big country. He has given us everything, enough land, enough fodder, enough water. He doesn't need land to settle down. There's another type of Fulani who is settled down in one place. He doesn't need cattle. He has other ways of making his living. So sometimes we conflate the two and we create the impression that there is just one Fulani. The real issue here is that you have criminal elements within Fulani who have become prominent in the last few years. And there are large numbers of Fulani, far, far larger than the criminal elements, who exist the same way they existed for the last 200 years, 300 years, antiquated, unproductive, ahistorical. They have no business being where they are now. We should have dealt with that issue a long time ago, but that's a topic for another time.
No, it dovetails. It dovetails. And I'm going to accuse you and people in your class.
Sure.
Before we came to this conversation, I tried to look up how many West African states have Fulani prime ministers or Fulani presidents. I've tried to look up how many of Nigerian states are governed by Fulanis. I tried to look up every field of modern endeavor that the Fulanis have achieved tremendous height. Intellectualism, deep thought, religion, medicine, governance, politics. Does the intellectual and political class within the Fulani nation not see the need to answer the question you've raised, moving the Fulani away from unproductive, archaic, unrewarding pastoralism into becoming a major chunk of modern day economy? Don't you see the reason for that?
Well, they did. Let me correct. You have to understand, the Fulani virtually governed this country in colonial times. The Sadona was Fulani. He had very powerful ministers who were Fulani. They saw the value, the asset that was livestock was a major asset. Forest was a major asset. The Fulani was a major asset. And what they did was to plan for him. He needed to move around with his cattle. If he wasn't going to be domesticated, he needed to move around and look for. They created routes, gazetted them, made them low. Nobody could actually build or block them. They created watering places where Fulani can travel for hundreds of miles. There are places where he can stop for his cattle to eat. There are places where he can stop for his cattle to drink. There was fantastic. Our forests were big assets. We used to have ministers of forestry because forests were assets. So the Fulani was catered for, the one that would not settle down, go to school and take a government job. But there were other Fulanis who did this. But the herder was catered for. His basic needs were access to land, access to food for his cattle and himself, watering places. That's all he asked for. Now, you could have, maybe we could have had a policy that said, no, domesticate these guys. And we were virtually moving in that direction. A few locations have been identified. One of them is the one that the governor of Kaduna State is talking about now, in Larduga, in Kachia local government. One of the largest. It has a huge population of Fulani cattle. There were a number of them. But what happened? From the 70s to the 80s, you had a collapse of leadership. Oil has done terrible things to this country. What oil did was to divert attention from everything that was a resource and asset in this country, entirely. And nobody focused on anything else. The North, the strength of the North laid in a number of things. It had good leaders, right up to maybe mid-70s, good leaders. It had land, huge amount of land, wealthy land that had everything on the surface and beneath it. It had water. It had a huge population. When you have these four, you're rich. You're rich. Unfortunately, the first one we lost was quality leadership. There was no vision. There was no will. People were just focused on what they will get from the federal center. And therefore, we took our eyes off the asset that the Fulani and his cattle represented. We took our eyes off our forests, our forest resources. We took our eyes off investing in infrastructure, routes. Urbanization came in, huge expansion of population. People were taking over these routes that the Fulani needed to travel, and they were building towns and cities around them. Nobody had anything, nobody would do anything. The state was not going to protect that because the Fulani herder has no constituency. He was only useful sometimes during elections. He had no constituency. These are people who just roamed around with cattle looking for where their cattle will eat. A Fulani would go hungry for 2 days if his cattle will find food to eat. That's his life. Now what happened? We continuously lost our vision. We lost control over these assets to a point where, in fact, in the last 10 to 15 years, what happened is we started witnessing large-scale rustling of cattle. Now, when you take cattle away from Fulani, you literally, it's like uprooting a tree entirely from the ground and throwing it away. It will die eventually. It dies. And that's what happened. In large numbers, cattle, Fulani were becoming more and more pushed into desperation. And when you have large numbers of Fulani who have cattle, what does he do? His life has not prepared him to do anything else. There's nothing. He doesn't have modern education. He doesn't have skills. He doesn't have any competencies. He had cattle. Now you've taken away the cattle. What does he do with his life? And the numbers were increasing, and the state was doing nothing. And we warned. Believe me, we didn't just sit on our hands. We warned. And I'm talking about the failure of leadership. I mentioned the land is still there. The water is still there.
The population is still there.
The population is still there. But we had no leadership that would actually realize that the long-term effect of this was you're going to have a large number of Fulani who knew nothing else other than cattle rearing. And when you have no cattle, what do? A few of them started rustling each other's cattle, attacking Hausa villages, and then Hausa communities now started chasing away Fulani. In fairness to everybody, some of what you're seeing in the southern part of the country didn't just start yesterday. It started in the north. Fulani can't go to a market. Hausa villagers will see a Fulani and say, aha, here they are, and they will chase a Fulani. Whether he's a criminal or not, they didn't want to know. He can't go to markets, he can't go to hospitals, he can't. Literally, Fulani were being marginalized and being pushed away and pushed away. He ran into the forests. Then the Fulani realized the power of the gun. It can make you rich overnight, and it can make you poor overnight. And this is a country that is swimming in small arms and light weapons, swimming literally. With 3 cows or 2 cows, you can buy an AK-47, maybe with less than that, maybe more. With 1 gun, you can take over a whole community. And it became increasingly an option to being pauperized and just sitting in your former place with just maybe 1 or 2 goats. The state didn't pay attention to this. They didn't care, because Fulani has no constituency. Fulani has no political, is not a political asset. 2015, the Fulani were mobilized more than any other time, and they voted for President Buhari.
Let me interject, please. Let me quote the former Minister of Interior, Dambazao, at the 2017 Security Conference organized by the Nigeria Police Force. He said that Fulanis were moving from across West Africa into Nigeria. And he told a story that when he got to Ghana, his Ghanaian counterpart complained to him that Fulanis from Nigeria were creating crisis for them. And he told him, I've come to complain to you because Fulanis from Ghana and Upper Togo were entering Nigeria to create crisis. Right. But there is a second narrative in addition to this, that before 2015 election, there was a deliberate move, a deliberate political move to bring in more Fulanis into Nigeria, essentially as political mercenaries. And that now the Nigerian state is finding it difficult to sort them out for them to go back. Have you heard this story?
Yes, I have.
Does it make sense?
No, it doesn't. And I can tell you 2 reasons why. First, in the 2015 elections, I was intimately involved in it. Intimately. And I told you there was massive mobilization of Fulani as voters to vote for President Buhari. There was nothing wrong with that. No. I am not aware of the fact that anybody was brought in. See, the problem is this, Sanjoku. Nigeria subscribed to the ECOWAS Treaty on movement of persons and goods. They didn't say every Nigerian can move around except Fulani, because Fulanis are West Africans, and they are all over the place. They're in every country. So you couldn't exclude Fulani. There are 3 million Nigerians in Ghana, maybe more. Maybe 70 or 80% of them from the southern part of the country. The same part of the country that is saying they don't want to see Fulani today. They are there because of the existence of the ECOWAS protocol on movement of persons and goods. So they are enjoying the same thing that Fulanis from Burkina Faso, from Mali are enjoying. You cannot be part of a region that subscribes to movement and say, except Fulani. Now, what you can do is to insist that when you come to my country, there are laws here that you have to respect. For instance, you are not allowed to carry arms. And what you need to do with that is to put a mechanism that identifies you as carrying an arm, and then we deal with you according to the law. But you can't go around and say, oh, all Fulanis are violent people, and we don't want to have them. What happens to their rights? What happens to the fact that everybody else in West Africa has rights emanating from the treaty, or the ECOWAS Treaty? So that's the problem. Fulanis move around because the ecology makes it necessary for them to move. Some places dry up quickly. They move from the northern part of West Africa to the southern part of West Africa in the dry season, because in the southern part of West Africa, there is fodder, there is water. Then when it starts raining, they move up. It's not just Nigeria, it's all over Africa. And people think that Fulani is combative. Maybe up to a point, they're right. But what else do you do? Look, you have 400, 300, 250 cattle. There are 4 of you. You can be attacked. Your cattle can be taken away from you. Hyenas can attack you. You live in the forest. So sometimes you see them with a machete. People think that's a weapon. It is a weapon in a certain context, and is also what you need to stay alive in certain contexts. They say Fulani is aggressive. Yes, if they have to go into your farm and eat up your food, that's aggression, and that's illegal. And they have no right to do that. But imagine a lifestyle that exposes you to the elements, to potential danger. You are on your own. Where you live, there are no policemen. There's no authority. There's nothing. It's just you, your native intelligence, some luck, and some experience about living in forests and bushes. Now, like I said, we had no business tolerating this kind of existence. We should have arrested this herding a long time ago. And the fault, in all honesty, belongs essentially to northern leaders and the present administration. President Buhari was the leader of Fulanis in the whole of West Africa before he became president. They had an informer, some kind of a group for Fulani. He was the nominal head. When he became president, he had to give it up. And so maybe that's what gives this idea that you bring in Fulani to vote. If there was mass mobilization of the Fulani in 2015, and I'm not defending President Buhari, all I'm saying is, you ask me if I'm aware of the rumors, but I know that there's no strong foundation. There's no strong foundation for that. Then who voted for him in 2019? Was it the same Fulani who came in and voted and then went away? Why is the Fulani fighting him? Because you see, when Fulani in Katsina State, Fulani criminals take over towns and villages, particularly villages, and they rape women, and they kill people, and they kidnap people on a daily basis. In Katsina, in Zamfara, in Kaduna, in Niger State, in Sokoto, Kebbi. They're fighting Buhari's policemen. They're fighting Buhari's military. They're making nonsense of a government that came to power on the back of a promise to secure the country. So what happened? If they really are Fulani, and they like you hear this kind of a lot of the nonsense that Fulani represents an Islamization agenda. They are there. They are Buhari's foot soldiers. Buhari is going to Islamize Nigeria. Buhari has nothing to do with the Islamic interest in this country. He's the president of Nigeria, and this is where we go wrong. A Fulani, like we were saying, is not a northern problem. It's not a Fulani problem. It's not Buhari's problem. It's a national problem. And if we don't see it in that sense, we'll be making a terrible mistake, because we'll be addressing a problem without understanding its nature. So people tend to reduce this to on a very narrow basis. And that is very, very dangerous. Now, like I said, it's very difficult with this kind of hysteria going on, and people say, oh, Fulani, they must leave, they must leave, they must leave. So you define your community in the southern part of the country as safe and secure to the degree that you don't see a Fulani man. You just don't want to see Fulani. You don't want his cattle. You don't want to see his cattle. You want his meat. You want the cattle, you want the meat, but you don't want to see the Fulani. Fulani is dangerous. All Fulanis are criminals, one way or the other. They harbor each other. They are the rapists there. And you get this idea that people actually genuinely believe that if they can just cleanse their towns and villages and forests of Fulani, everybody will live secure and comfortable lives, and they will live happily ever after.
Dr. Ahmed, that appears to be true, and I want to make this statement based on the number one Fulani man's own statement. The Sultan of Sokoto, Sir Abubakar Said III, in the same conference that I've just quoted Lambazel, the former interior minister, the Sultan said, and I quote, "Who is responsible for the burning and killing in these communities and creating the insecurity? Who arms them? Not these poor fellows burning things. It is we, the elite." And he said, we must tell ourselves the home truth in that conference. The Benue State governor was there. He turned in his chair and look towards the Sultan. Just 3 weeks ago, Sultan made another very telling statement. He said, out of every 10 arrested kidnappers, 7 of them are Fulanis. Does that not warrant somebody saying the Fulanis are rapists?
He didn't
I
say.
must also accept, though, let me not quote him out of context.
Sure.
He also said that did not warrant leveling every Fulani person as a criminal.
What he said is 70% of all the criminals arrested for kidnapping and banditry and rapists are Fulani. He didn't say 70% of Fulani are rapists and kidnappers. He didn't. He said those arrested. Nobody will argue that there are huge numbers of Fulani people in bushes involved in kidnapping, raping, and banditry. Nobody. Nobody. And they will be living in their own life. 2, nobody should deny the responsibility of the leadership here to deal with an emerging problem that was that we couldn't arrest. The neglect, abandonment of the Fulani's rights to protection. The state did not protect him at the critical point when he needed to be protected. So if you want to visit problems, let's start from the north. Let's start from the elite. Where were all these people now running helter-skelter when the Fulani will come in and say they've taken my cattle and nothing is done? When he will come in and say, oh, they have rustled my cattle, they have killed me, nothing will be done. When he comes and says, I can't go to towns, they will chase me. Hausa peasants don't want to see me because they say all Fulanis rape women, all Fulanis kidnap people. Nobody does anything. What happens? Nothing. What happened when the Fulani started picking arms and fighting back? Nothing. So you're dealing with the fundamental failure of the state to impose its weight to make sure that this creeping danger was arrested when it should not have risen to this level. But the Sultan was right, Dambazo was right. The truth is that principally, the Nigerian state has failed not just the Fulani, it has failed us. It has failed to deal with a problem that it should have dealt with. Look, take the militancy in the Niger Delta. All the way back to the 70s, maybe early 60s, people were complaining about environmental pollution. You are taking away all these resources. We don't see anything. Our towns and villages, we don't have drinking water. They were right. At that stage, the state ought to have moved in quickly to say, listen, we can't do this. These are some of the poorest communities in Nigeria, but the resource that is developing the country is coming from here. And in addition to being poor, we're also punishing them with pollution. We didn't do anything. We treated Niger agitation before it became militancy as a problem of the Ijo, the communities there, but not as a Nigerian problem. And we thought, oh, they are just troublemakers. They kill people like Ken Saro-Wiwa and say, oh, these troublemakers, it will finish. Didn't. Continued to grow and to grow because the problem became political. People got tired of being pushed around. People, I mean, they began to see a situation where the Nigerian state is becoming fatter and there's nothing on the ground for them. How did we solve this problem? By defining it and seeing it as a national problem and not a Niger Delta problem. We took resources belonging to all Nigerians and huge amounts of resources, huge. And that was the right thing to do. To invest it in the short term, in the immediate term, in the short term, in the medium term, and in the long term. And that's how the militancy issues was contained. Now, so defining the problem properly is very, very important. Dealing with it at a time before it escalates and becomes a very serious problem is also important. If you fail to do that, by the time you come around to deal with it, it has become a massive problem that you can't deal with it. The Fulani issue, you began by asking me, is there a Fulani problem in this country? Yes, there is a Fulani problem. It is the time to deal with it now. If we don't deal with it now, it will become bigger. And I'll tell you 3 areas where it will become bigger. People think chasing Fulani away from the south to the north is going to solve their problem. First of all, there have been criminals in the southern part of the country like they are everywhere. Even if the Fulani is not there, you still have crime. You would have cultism, you have kidnapping, you have banditry. We knew about kidnapping, armed robbery. So it's an illusion. But since you identify the Fulani for now as your prime target in terms of your prime source of insecurity, you think you can just, if he leaves, that solves the problem. Okay, so the Fulani leaves. And he goes to another part of the country with his grievance and his cattle. But he has access back to your community. He doesn't just go like that. And you've done, in the process of sending him away, maybe
you've created
you've
an
killed
enemy
him.
for yourself.
Maybe you've created an additional enemy and another source of. Just ask northern states what happened. Northern peasants in towns and villages created the Fulani militant by pushing him away and punishing him away and attacking. When you talk to them, they will tell you, our main problem started, real problem, apart from historic persecution, exploitation by the state, our main problem started from when Hausa, not Igbo, not Yoruba, Hausa villagers started looking at us, all of us, as criminals.
Hold it there. You're watching the Signature Show on AIT. We are addressing a question. Is there a Fulani question in Nigeria? Stay with us. We'll be back.
This is SignatureTV.org. Breaking the news. Following the news. Analyzing the news. 247 round the clock. All on the go. SignatureTV.org. News in your pocket.
Well, let me welcome you back. I'm still conversing with Dr. Nasir Baba Ahmed. He's the spokesperson for the Northern Elders Forum. As I said at the beginning, he is a Fulani. And the question we're addressing is there a Fulani question in Nigeria? We are also treating other issues arising therefrom. Dr. Ahmed, before we took this short break, we were talking about the transition of the Fulani man. Simple, natured, or moving suddenly to be perceived as a criminal element. But please, let me take you back to the statistics I gave you earlier. The number of Nigerian governors who are Fulanis. In other words, they have not just political authority, they have the right under the Constitution to administer the land. While the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who today is a Fulani, have we tried to think of a Marshall Plan, a kind of a collaborative strategy between the federal government and the state governors to try to see this Fulani thing as a national issue that needs to be addressed, and then convince other Nigerians that indeed it is necessary. The way we addressed the Niger Delta question, we should be able also to address this question.
Well, you know, we began by your brutally frank question about, is there a Fulani question? Now, you're asking me now, is there a solution to the Fulani problem?
Yes.
There is. Unfortunately, we need to take some very difficult decisions before we get to the solutions. One is to recognize what you said, that we need to recognize that this is a national problem, not a northern problem, not Buhari's Wahala, not Fulani issue, not a political problem, but a national security problem that needs to be addressed holistically and honestly. That's the most important one. Unfortunately, you don't have a consensus here. If you remember 3-4 years ago, there was this big hoo-ha arising from the Benue anti-grazing law thing. And federal government came in with the National Livestock Protection or Production thing, and then the Ruga policy. If you remember, there was a huge amount of controversy around that. Many people said, no, they want to take our land and turn it into Ruga. We don't want Ruga. We don't want Nigerian livestock. It died. It died because there was no consensus nationally that there was a problem that needed to be addressed. Because we refused to engineer that consensus, the people who had responsibility for engineering that consensus didn't pursue it, it virtually died. Benue State enacted its anti-grazing law. A few other states followed suit. And we ignored the problem. We thought, okay, the problem will go away. Forget it. The Vice President's office did fantastic work. I saw part of the report. It was fantastic. They really dug deep into this issue. It required huge investments in resources, in infrastructure, but it was doable. Now, a focused and responsible leadership will follow through. And then the next thing will be to convince Fulani in their own interests that this is the way to go, because hostility is becoming more and more a barrier to the Fulani herder. There was less space for him to carry all this cattle. Now everywhere he moves around, he's either moving into somebody's farm or somebody's community or somebody's house. So you needed to do this at the same, two things at the same time. So you needed something like a Marshall Plan, something akin to what we did in the Niger Delta. First, understand the problem, realize that it is a national issue, deploy national resources, even if states in the north are going to contribute. And they should, and they must. But we need collaboration between state and federal government. We need huge resources because it's not a favor to the Fulani.
No.
The livestock represents a vital national asset. Fulanis are Nigerians like everybody else. If you invest in the Niger Delta, you're not just bribing people of the Niger Delta. You're actually investing in Nigerians who live in the Niger Delta, whose land and farms and everything has been poisoned, and who are entitled to some of these resources that is giving the country a stimulus for growth. But unfortunately, that element is missing. And this is the question that you are asking. Is there something that could be done? As we speak, there really isn't any national plan, because a lot of people don't like the National Livestock Production Plan, I think NPL, the National Livestock Plan. A lot of people don't like it. A lot of people don't want to hear about Ruga because it suggests that land is going to be appropriated from people and given to the cattle Fulani. At the bottom of all this is people are saying cattle rearing is a private business. Why do we need to take government money and spend it on Fulani? Why don't they invest in themselves? Go to the bank, get money, buy land, put your cattle there. Why? Why do we need to give Fulani all this and just to get peace? You're not doing this to get peace. You're doing this because they are Nigerians like everybody else. One way or the other, their lifestyle has become a problem for them and for everybody. If you say, let the Fulani and other Nigerians settle themselves, you see what you are getting now. Everybody adopts a do-it-yourself approach. This state says, we don't want to see you in our forest. This state says, we don't want to see you at all. These people say, no, don't even follow. Even on their way out of the southern part of the country, there are places in Nigeria where they are not allowed to follow. How the hell do they get, forgive my language, how do they get into Nigeria and into the north? And when they come to the north, how do they become a northern problem? How do they become a northern issue? Certainly, there are a lot of Fulanis here in the north, but we are terrified too of having these thousands and thousands of Fulani and their cattle coming into the north and trampling over every farm as well, because nobody has prepared to receive these people. So what we need now is our calm heads. We need leaders to exercise some restraint in terms of what they say. We need people to now begin to look at what needs to be done immediately, mobilize resources to do this, and work feverishly to create the environment that will allow large numbers of Fulani to leave the south. My view, to be honest with you, is I don't think that the Fulani herder will ever go back in the numbers in the south. I think enough negative impression, enough hostility has been created around him that it will be unsafe for the Fulani herder to go back to the south. Even in the north, the space he has for maneuver is very limited. So the only option is a sedentary kind of life, which requires money, because you have to build resources, you have to build the infrastructure, it costs money, but you have to settle in. If we fail to do all this in the next few months, in the next 1 or 2 years, if we fail to do all this, what is likely to happen is that more and more Fulani people are going to become criminals. Because the margin between the Fulani who is on this side of the law, who is trying desperately to cling to a legal existence and to his cattle, and becoming criminal, is very thin. And we see that when you go to the bush. As we hear from people who have gone there, people like Dr. Gumi and a few others who have gone there, you can recognize these people. A few months ago, they were herding cattle. They were living in villages or in the forests, and suddenly now they can carry a gun, they can shoot, they can kill, they can rape women. How is it so easy to move from a Fulani who was herding 100 cattle to a criminal who now picks 3 or 4 kidnappers, people, and he makes he makes millions. He makes in matter of hours. Yes, it's so much faster to make money. Of course, he lives a very short life because either the bandits themselves kill him or the state kills him. It's a horrible life, but it gives him a sense of power. It gives him a huge amount of money. And it's so easy to kidnap people because the state doesn't exist to stop you from doing that. So this is the issue, and this is why it's important to get the problem right. Don't misunderstand this problem. It represents a very serious threat to this country.
This conversation is going to continue next Sunday. My name remains Mwabu Endanger. Let's meet next Sunday. Good afternoon. Well, that's our package for this Sunday. I'm sure more Nigerians would want to weigh in on this issue and others which are putting wedges into our peaceful coexistence. Let's meet again next Sunday. My name remains Mwabu Endanger. Good afternoon.